Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week, Chris and I are talking about charging what you're worth and how do you charge what you're worth. Chris and I used to work with each other in the utilities industry, and we go back into thinking about how do you negotiate a pay rise? How do you start to navigate and understand how you increase your salary when you're in the corporate world? And also our transition into the business world. How do you charge what you're worth? How do you decide how much value you're giving to your clients, and therefore how do you pitch that? It's a really good chat. Really enjoyed this one. Expect to kind of listen into some stories from our past around what we've been offered and some of the mistakes that we've made. But also how we kind of arrived as business owners charging rates that we're comfortable with. So listen in, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So welcome back to the podcast. This week it's just Chris and I. How are you doing, Chris?
Very good, mate. Very good. It's a Friday evening nearly, so we're looking forward to chilling out for the weekend.
Yeah, like ditto. Definitely looking forward to some downtime this afternoon or this evening. But yeah, before that, I guess we're going to get into a subject that we've spoken quite a bit about on our drives to and from football over the last few months, about like charging what you're worth. So this episode's all about like how do you get paid? And what do you charge for what you're worth? So how do you make sure that happens? So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that, both like our experience in the corporate world as business owners as well. It's like you, whether you're looking for a pay rise or looking for a move to a job, like how do you start kind of pitching what your salary is? And if you're a business owner, like how do you charge your clients? Chris is in brands, so he's got a ton of stuff he works with his clients with, and obviously has experience in terms of what he charges them. And similarly, I've got different price points for some of my services in the coaching business. So yeah, will we just dive right into it, Chris? Yeah,
definitely. It might be good to start from a kind of business point of view, since we kind of worked in the corporate sector, because that's our kind of evolution, and talking about our own experiences as well. Cool. So I guess we both can kick off, actually. I mean, I guess it's understanding, we talked about your value and what you're worth as well. And there's nothing sometimes more soul destroying than working in a corporate organisation when you get to that time of the year where you start to talk about pay rises and start talking about what you're worth and your targets and all this kind of stuff, and whether or not you've actually hit your appraisals and everything else. And then you find out that whatever you've been aiming for, you've either hit what you want to hit, and then all of a sudden you either got to fit towards a bell curve that is then going to give you a certain percentage of wage rise, or if you want a higher percentage, that's not within the capabilities of your management and your leader. So there's an element of me which I'm not as cynical about it all looking back, but I understand how the game works. So the way I look at it is that I used to have a team of designers as well who'd come to me and say, right, okay, I want to achieve this and this and this. And I go, no, fantastic, we'll do that. But then I had other people come to me and say, like, I want you to tell me what to do to try and achieve this. And now that I've looking back, having my own business as well, and I can appreciate that more, to say that it's not about your manager, about your boss or whoever else is above them. It's about your commitment and your drive and what you want to achieve in that organisation. So if you want to really be successful, sometimes it is being the most reactive and being the most on the ball, understanding an answer for everything that you've got ready and waiting. But there's another element where you've got to create your own path in that organisation, which is you can then, not in a bad way, but outshine your boss, understand where the capabilities are. I had some fantastic bosses, and Darren knows a couple of them, some kind of more straight-lined and some bit more kind of out there. The more out there ones were saying that this is up to you to define your role here. You can write your own objectives, you can create your own structure, but at the same time, I want you to show me that you've got the initiative to succeed. And if you show that initiative and you push yourself, that's when the rewards will come. It won't just be the 2% or 3% pay rise that you're probably expecting the bonus. It'll be much, much beyond that. So for me, knowing your worth in the corporate sector is much more about than just looking at, well, what is the next pay rise going to be? What's my next percentage? It's thinking about my longevity in the business, where do I want to be? And what is my boss's boss doing well that I can emulate? And actually, what are they not doing well that I can then cover up as well and actually showcase that I can do it well? So for me, that's a big thing, Darren.
Yeah, there's tons in there. Like I'm going to try and pick up on a few things. Like on On that, there's a couple of things that jump out. So Jim Rohn talks a lot about it in terms of you not being a tree. If you're unhappy with where you are and what you're getting paid, and you feel like you're not appreciated, you're not a tree. Get up, move, change department, change manager, change industry, change job role. That sounds really quite a harsh place to maybe start, but it's something that if I look back in hindsight, it took me to start investing in property and start kind of opening my eyes to me appreciating my own worth and contribution in terms of the value I gave the business before I started asking for different roles and different experiences, because of what they could bring me more than just the money. I focused on the areas that I was able to enjoyed and the areas that I was able to bring the most value. And that actually brought bigger increases in terms of salary rises. So I think there's a huge thing about recognizing that you're not fixed to where you are. You started off talking about the bell curve, and God, it just took me right back where you had these conversations where you're like, yeah, I know you're performing really, really well, Darren, but this guy in our team's he's got the overperforming rate, so I can't have two. And you're like, yep. What are you talking about? And it actually creates this internal conflict and resentment between people that are in teams that are trying, isn't it? That teams that are trying to work together. So you're like, you're absolutely right. That's the wrong focus to be looking at, right? What's your increment? That is totally the wrong view. It should be about where do you want to be and how come you can add the most value to that business. And it may be that you look at it and go, do you know what? I can't add all that much value, or there's people there that add more value, and that might mean you need to move, or the people there just don't appreciate your value, the value that you give. Do you know, this isn't a question of what you're worth as an individual either. This is just about the salary that you get paid as for the contribution you give to an industry. I talk about Jim Rohn again. He talks about McDonald's. He's like, good McDonald's. He's like, they'll give you, I can't remember what it was at the time, like £5 an hour. If you do it with a smile on their face, do you know what I mean? They'll maybe pay you £6 an hour. And there's all about that motivation that wherever you start, you can have a vision to push yourself in areas that you enjoy, where you add the value. That's where money will follow you. Rather than looking at, well, I've done X, Y, Z this year, I deserve a above average increment to my salary. It's that's a total wrong game. What you're looking for is a promotion to a different role, or a move to a new industry where you are valued and you're working in a zone of genius. So yeah, there's quite a lot in that statement, I would say, Chris, but I think the main things for me are you're not a tree, get up and move. You need to know who you are, what your value is. And if you don't feel that value is there, don't be sat moaning about that I'm not getting a pay rise or I'm not getting paid what I'm worth. Get up and do something about it. And if you don't feel like you can within your own organization, go and test the market and see where you are valued. That's how most people get higher salaries, by moving about. You got told that off someone before, didn't you? If you want to earn more money, get yourself out of here, go and join a few different businesses.
Well, definitely, and that's why you see people getting headhunted as well. So a headhunted for a job is a compliment as well. That shows that you've got the initiative, you've got the kudos in the industry, and people understand that you're actually a leader as well. And even I take my own experience, I always remember this, where my boss at the time, fantastic guy, went off long-term sick, and I was covering his role for maybe, I think it was 5 months. He was getting paid more than double what I was getting paid, and I was covering the role, doing left, right, and centre. I was basically the shit hit the fan, and I was like, I'll step up and do it. I get a tremendous report back and all this kind of stuff, and I wanted a massive pay rise. And at that point, it was said, well, like Darren said, it doesn't fit within that curve. We can give you a bit of a bumper, but we can't do this. We can look at a different role and all this, but fantastic work. And I was a bit pissed off at the time, but then I realised, do you know what? The experience that's given me, I really had to raise my game and work for the chief marketing officer, the directors, the financial directors, all this kind of people. And that gave me the kudos for myself to go, do you know what? I can do this. This is actually an opportunity for me now to take this experience and then transition that into something I want to do, which is my own business. So there is positives in that as well. And what I would say as well is that sometimes the most unhappy you are in a business or organisation isn't something to do with money. It can be a big factor. It can be like you were saying, Darren, with the role itself. If you're not happy with your business, look about you. Is this the role you want to be doing, or is it the fact that you could actually earn more money doing it somewhere else where you're more valued? So yeah, like Dan says, you're not a tree, so get up and move as well.
Yeah, there is, like, you reminded me of something similarly. My as is often in some businesses, decisions are made quite quickly about who's staying and who's going in a business. So I woke up one morning, was in early as normal, 6:30, 7. My director phones me and someone's got fired. My boss has got fired. So on the spot, I'm kind of on the back foot, and I remember getting asked to kind of fill in. And I think I did a phenomenal job. I actually hired a full retention team whilst they were recruiting for that position. But I felt not confident enough to be able to step in and apply for that role. Why, I don't know. No one asked me to, and I was waiting on an invitation. And I think one other thing that I would say, like, you need to know your worth and step into it, like what you did. Like, I'm ready for this. I'm kind of ready to go in and take that. Whereas I took I'm going to take this on for 3 months until you recruit someone that's appropriately skilled to take this position. And there was no reason why I couldn't have stepped up and kind of owned that, taken that opportunity. But I didn't even apply. So I think there's a bit of risk. There's two things. I remember getting asked and I've been on the back foot and kind of going, like, you'll do it, you'll get a bump in your salary of X thousand. Now this, based upon the salary that my boss was getting, right, it would have been like, say it was double my salary and I got like a few extra grand from it, pro rata.
It's the breadcrumbs, isn't it? Breadcrumbs.
And the thing is, because I was on the back foot and it's part of this environment, and I was like, oh, well, like, I don't want to get fired. And, I was operating out of fear. So I was just like, yeah, like, I'll do it for, I'll do it for that. And like, reflecting back, I was really disappointed in myself because I wasn't more assertive in that situation. So if someone's listening to this and potentially that may happen through restructures and whatnot, kind of maybe be thinking forward, always be prepared as if you needed to step up or if you were asked for it. I done a massive job and helped my business out, helped my director out, and did an amazing job. And I can look back at that and confidently say that. And what I got offered at the time was paltry in terms of in terms of a contribution to it. And that's on me. That was on me because I felt a little bit of fear. I was on the back foot and I didn't fully appreciate my own worth at that point. So I definitely say, like, make sure you know that and have a few hypothetical situations in your mind that you might go, if that played out, how would I respond? So if your boss left and you got asked to step up, if you got asked to move and do a secondment somewhere else, remember, the person that asks for your support is the person with a greater need in that negotiation. So don't just take what's being offered straight away. If that doesn't match where you think is fair and reflective, even just buy yourself some time. Just say, do you know what? It's absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate you thinking of me. Can I have like overnight just to think about it and I'll come back to you? And that's more than reasonable. And it gives you a bit of space and time to get your thoughts together and to go back with a more coherent and cohesive sort of response rather than feeling like you're on the back foot as well. So yeah, like, I appreciate you saying that, Chris, because it's reminded me of something that hopefully might be helpful to some people.
I think definitely you've picked it up well there, Darren, because obviously there's an element as well. We're never really taught as human beings how to negotiate. As children, we negotiate by, that's my toy, that's your toy, and you have a bit of a tantrum, you start fighting in the playground as well, that's my ball and all this kind of stuff. So you negotiate through life with your kind of social circumstances. We're never told how to negotiate as an individual in a business setup as well. So when you're talking to somebody about a wage rise or any kind of whether or not you want to do the role or anything else, the only time you ever do that is when you're going for an interview. When you're at the interview stage, they're really just checking to see if you're a nutcase or not for this role, because you've already qualified and everything else, if you're a good fit and if they're the right fit as well. So a negotiation piece, it's maybe like you're saying, it's just taking that time away from it, speaking to family and friends, maybe benchmarking the role to see, well, what is the role out there that's comparable that I'd be going for? and then having that conversation, so you got that confidence as well. But understanding what negotiation tactics could be, because you're right, Darren, if you visualise what that could be, that different conversations, then you're comfortable and ready for it as well. Without that, you're just going to walk in and you're going to be really shy and meek, and you're going to get taken advantage of, probably like we both did, and get tossed some breadcrumbs.
Yeah, it's a continuation of what I was just saying as well. When I was recruiting this whole team, so in the time when I was an interim charge, I brought in a fantastic team of people, all of them to a person, fantastic. But I remember there was a couple of roles, and obviously I won't be naming names, but it's a couple of roles. And there couldn't have been any difference in terms of the competence of the people doing the roles. There was a bit of difference, not a huge difference, but one came in and was like, "This is what I want," very assertive, very self-assured, knew the value that she would be able to bring. The other person had tons of value as well, but when it came to a salary conversation, the one that was self-assured, confident, and came across, and I'm not saying the other person was shy and retiring by any means, but when it got to the salary conversation, it was, I want this salary from the person, from one of them, and the other, it was, listen, I work for Buttons, so I know the range was about 13, 14 grand on the roll. And it's so they pitched themselves by that getting a low rate. And if they'd pitched themselves 13 grand higher or whatever, there wouldn't have been any difference. They were still the right person for the role. And it's such a shame that sometimes, it's something in business that's often said, there's always be someone out there less capable than you. It's usually wrapped up in a meme that there's usually idiots out there working and doing the job that you want to do, doing it less effectively, just because they've got the kind of, whether they call it balls or, courage to just go and put themselves out there and take the opportunity or ask for that money. So it's absolutely crazy. It's a shame. So if anyone's kind of listening to this, I'd love to hear it and go, do you know what? Even if it's difficult to negotiate your salary up, but if you ask for 10 grand more than than what you think you might even be worth, you can always have that conversation back down. If you're the right person for that job, someone's going to come back with a counter offer for you. But you can't, if you ask for, say, 50 grand, and you really would, the role scales between 50 and 60, they're like, well, you could equally ask for 60 and someone could say, do you know what, I think just with level of your expertise and experience, I think we're prepared to go to 52, 53. If you ask for 50, you ain't getting that extra few grand maybe for a couple of years. So there's know your worth, but there's also kind of be playing the game a little bit and recognizing that you're in an interview or you're going for a promotion. It's you that is, you're the person that is being interviewed. So they want a quality candidate, in that position. They ain't paying the bills. Not in a big corporate anyway, unless it's a relatively small business. But in a big corporate, it's they're not paying the bills. They honestly will not care.
Well, I'm laughing as well because we're going to come on to this, but I'm going to tell you another story as well in a second. But it's about anchoring high, like you said, anchor high. So in business as well, anchor high, which will come.
Chris Foss talks about that, doesn't he? Negotiating. Yep.
Yep, so we'll come on to that in a minute, but just a very quick segue story. So when I worked in an agency as well, I was a junior designer. I went at a really low paid wage. And I remember I was doing early hours, late nights, all the stuff you'd always do. And I remember I was unhappy with my salary because I was actually starting to really contribute a lot. I was doing a lot of stuff for big clients like Walt Disney World and Silverstone, all these big clients, doing tons of work. And I didn't have the courage to speak to the two MDs. One MD was this kind of old, fuddy-duddy kind of miser, looked a bit money, didn't want to change money for light bulbs, all this kind of guy. But he's a really nice guy. And then another one was this lady who was fantastic. I used to take her dog for walks at lunch, and I decided to approach her. Met her in the boardroom, and I was really nervous. She sat down, she went, "Right, Chris, what's going on?" And I said, "Do you know what it is? I'm kind of uncomfortable with my wages just now. I think I've been doing really well, blah, blah." And she went, oh, okay. Well, do you know what? You're right. You've been here a while. What are you looking for? Anchor tie? And she went, "Yeah, okay, perfect. Let Ian know, and that'll be done." Cool, no worries. And Ian's MD.
You've just
anchor tie and got it.
Made extra money just like that. But this is the thing, it's the I can't remember who writes the book, but the Aladdin factor, you need to ask for it. You have to ask for it to be given. If you don't ask for it, it's 100% that of time you're going to be disappointed. You're going to guarantee your answer.
But the only thing I'd say about that is that what you have to do is you have to showcase that you're worth it as well. Because you know your worth and showcase that they know your worth as well. Because if you're an asset in that organisation, so if you're going to move, they lose an asset. And to bring in somebody, to train somebody, especially in a corporate organisation, it costs so much money and to retain that individual. So they're aware of their churn, whether or not they lose employees and how often they have to get them back in. So definitely, but I think that's enough for the corporate sector, Dan. I don't know if you bring.
I think it is, yeah. I mean, if we chat any longer, someone from HR will be. I'll have broken some contractual obligation from long ago, but yeah, let's move on, shall we? So moving into business then. What's your take on? You've been in business a couple of years more than I have. How has your, I guess, pricing evolved to make sure, I guess, you were still feeling that you were giving value to clients and also making sure that you're comfortable with what you're charging, I guess?
Well, I think the one thing about pricing, which I found fantastic, is that, because obviously I worked in the brand sector, I work with agencies and all this kind of stuff. So whenever you're trying to work out your pricing model, nobody really wants to tell you the prices because everyone wants to keep that closely guarded. So if you work for an agency, the agency rates will be much higher because they've got bricks and mortar, they've got lots of staff and everything else, coffee and everything to pay for, beers at the weekend, whatever else. So their rate is much higher. So for a designer, it might be, say, £130 an hour, but the designer doesn't get paid anything like that. So when I was trying to figure out my own rates, it took me so long to try and figure that out because I knew my kind of client base I wanted to go to. I knew a rough rate as well. But what I did was I asked people as well. I asked lots of people I knew in the industry. I asked lots of people that I didn't know as well. And I started to get a kind of idea of a kind of gauge of what would work and what wouldn't work. And I started to create a kind of pricing model structure as well. I started to have different rates depending on the client I work with. So for charities, I've got a slightly different rate, which is a lesser rate, because I feel like giving back, you should have a bit more of an opportunity to let them use your service and try and use as much as they can within their budget constraints and give that extra value as well. Because whatever money you take off a charity, it can end up taking somebody off the phone, taking something away from research or whatever else. And I don't want that as much as possible. Try and give them as much pro bono's work as well. But what I'd say is it takes a bit of time to get that understanding. And what you need to be aware of as well is the sliding scale model as well. So I've talked about this before, I think. Whereas if you're going to work for a company that say it's a FTSE 100 company, they've been in business 25 years, national organisation, say they've got tens of thousands of staff, lots of legacy, lots of assets about there, and they come and ask you for a project. So for me, it'd be maybe a brand redesign project, a brand strategy piece. For me, that's going to take a lot more time, a lot more investment. I'll probably have to bring a lot more people in. But then if I compare that to a family business, it's maybe got 5 employees, steady growth, 10 years, not a lot of legacy, local but growing, that model that I'd apply to that organisation isn't going to be completely similar. There's going to be elements that are going to be similar, but the pricing structure needs to be different and reflect that organisation. And then again, if you go to a startup, it's maybe a one person, got a great idea, then that model needs to change as well. So you need to always price the client, never price a project, because the project and sliding scales can change dramatically. But know your worth, know your base rate that you can go to, which is understand what is your how much is your electric going to cost you, how much is your premises going to cost you, how much is your fuel, everything. Work all that out as well so that you're never going to sit in a negative as well. But at the same time, never charge a high price point just for the sake of it. Understand your clients, work on it and develop it, and understand your hourly rate against your day rate as well. So that's not a full description of what your hourly rates are, but it's a bit of a kind of ask people, have a conversation. I gave somebody who was wanting to go into design from a job, and I gave them my day rates, I gave them my freelance rates, I gave them everything and said, this is what I charge. So nobody told me this when they wanted to know. So if you want to know, come and ask me.
Cool. How much do you charge for a logo?
A logo, again, it depends. So a logo, no, being honest. So
you know why I asked this, so yeah.
But a logo, yeah. So a logo, people ask me that as well. We've had many conversations, but again, it depends on the client, depends on the history, depends on the background, depends if it's going to be a local piece that's going to be used within your community, or it's going to be a global piece. So it depends on the brief, depends on the client. Always charge the client, always ask the client as well. So that's one of my early lessons in business about getting your rates right is ask people their rates, understand the marketplace, understand your own rates, understand who you're going to go for. If you're going to go for oil tycoons, your rate's going to be a lot higher than what you're going to be charging at a local charity as well.
Yeah. No, I asked that kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek. I follow Crystal, who I think you must have put me onto him, but his Instagram content's brilliant. But that's one of the things that he talks about, and it's kind of, it could be frustrating. You go like, people starting a new business, it's like, all right, I need someone from brand, like how much is a logo? Because that's what a brand is. And I know we spoke to that in an earlier episode, but it's like, how much is a logo? Well, do you know what? It depends. Like it could be the exact same amount of work for you, but actually, where's that brand going to be placed? Is it going to be, like you say, is it going to be global? Is it going to be for a family business? Is it going to be for a charity? Is it going to be pasted over a livery of 1,000 vans up and down the country? Where is that logo going to be? It's just about the logo.
It's a shame as well. You look at the historical example. So I love New York. You've all seen that with the I and the heart and NY. So that was created by, I can't remember the designer, and it was really cheap. I think it was a couple of $100 or something he charged. And actually, he never fully understood the scale of what that had become, because he never really fully, I don't really know, but I'd imagine that he wasn't really told that'd be. So I can come on to other pricing structures for creatives as well later on. But there's that example where if you don't understand the full brief of where it's going to be, then you don't understand how to charge for it. Where you look at the Nike concept against Pepsi. Nike swoosh was only, again, about $400. Pepsi was millions, but that's because at that time, Pepsi is basically $1 million brand, $1 billion brand, if you like. At that time, Nike wasn't. So you understand you're charging your client as well. Even example of, was it Picasso who done the drawing in the napkin?
The napkin, yeah.
Yeah, famous story about obviously years of work, all that training and learning, and somebody asked him to draw him a wee doodle, and he said that would be this much. It was an astronomical price. And they went, how can you charge that? Only took you 2 seconds. He said, no, it's taken me how many years, 50 years, whatever it is, of experience to bring it to this point. So know your worth, know what you charge as well.
Yeah, so like, I guess what Chris alluding to there, it's like all your years in terms of like training as a designer, your experience in terms of managing teams, working both like, in industry, but also working kind of with different organizations, kind of more in the kind of client side. You've picked all of that experience up, and that's what's going into how effective you're going to be in terms of as a business, in terms of the value you're going to give that client. So Picasso, it's like, yeah, I'm not paying you because it took me 2 minutes to draw this on a napkin. I'm charging you, 30 grand because of all the 15 years, 20 years, 30 years worth of experience that allowed me to draw that for 2 minutes on a napkin.
Right. It's amazing nobody considers the amount of training and financial investment you've put in. So if you look at your own business, Darren, so obviously you've put so much financial investment into coaching, understanding coaching, going through the right procedures to understand that, and in property as well. You've done the official training, you did everything else so that you become the expert. Well, not the expert, you're not the full, nobody's really the full expert at that point, the specialist, if you like, in that field. And there's still way to go in that. So then that gives you the confidence, I guess, and the kudos to then charge what you'd like to charge. But how did you find it within your organisation and your business?
Do you know what? It's really interesting. It's changing all the time, mate. So I think when I first started coaching, if I think about from a coaching point of view, there was an element of doing free, getting coaching clients, getting experience under my belt. So part of my accreditation, this isn't one of those weekend courses or online courses you can just jump on, do a couple of multiple choice questionnaires and come out with a certificate at the end. This was like a face-to-face 18-month like end-to-end program, and there's a certain number of accredited hours for both training but coaching as well. You need to go out there and get at least 40 hours worth of coaching. So 40 hours worth of coaching, it's like, well, I want to get to 40 hours worth of coaching as quickly as possible. I want to build that experience in, and I could do that more quickly as an inexperienced coach or a trainee coach by not charging, or charging. What I tend to do is like pay what you can. So that's how I started. That's how I kind of got my experience up as a coach. And I definitely found there is an element of paying for something, like if you pay for something that's slightly uncomfortable, then you might lean into it a bit more and you value it a bit more. I mean, I talk about a lot that I paid for, it was like 28 grand for property investment training. That's a crazy amount of money, but you're absolutely no doubt that I'm justifying the benefit of that because it's sunk cost bias. It's like, yeah, I've paid it, so it's definitely worth it, and I've got all of it. Like in the fullness of day, that was never full value for money. But the regret.
But when you imagine just now, sorry to interrupt, but when you imagine just now, anyone listening to this who isn't into property or whatever, they're in business, whatever else, or well, not in business, for somebody to say 28 grand to invest at that point is a heck of a lot of money. But to have that future vision of what that can become, and you've had it's kind of, I'd probably say the tortoise in the hare. You're the kind of tortoise in the story where you're just slowly building up your portfolio with the end goal in sight, and you will get there. It's just going to take a bit longer. So that's the way I'd probably describe listening to you talking about this. I
would say like that amount of money is too much money to be charging for that, and there's a good reason why nobody's charging that in the industry right now. COVID kind of put a full stop against that sort. But do I regret paying it? Like, absolutely not. I think my point on it is because it was so expensive, I lent into it more, and it was like I can't fail. I didn't have 28 grand like in savings. That went straight into debt. I had a young family to support. This was a vision, something that was going to be a game changer for us. We put ourselves in so much in the red that we couldn't fail. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what you need to do. It needs to be astronomical. But I do believe that a price point that makes your customers lean into it and become involved and value it more, I absolutely agree. That doesn't mean that low cost and cheap or free service doesn't have any value. Absolutely not. I've worked with clients that I've paid kind of full price for, or more than proportionally than others, and they've from a coaching point of view, they haven't got as much value. I haven't seen the output from them. They haven't been that invested. Whereas I've seen some free clients that were absolutely invested, and we're like so grateful for the opportunity to have someone sit with them and coach them for that period of time. So there's a balance. I kind of sit somewhere in the middle, but as a coach, once I've came through from a training point of view, coming back to your original question, I think I've transitioned quite quickly from, certainly as a coach, when I left my full-time job, it was like, right, I need to get to my salary as quickly as possible. So I was quite focused on, I need to charge an appropriate rate. And therefore I wanted to work harder and have more clients rather than having it a very high rate. Now I kind of charge myself as a life coaching. I've kind of positioned at about £100 per session. And I found that I've kind of gradually increased that. But £100, I kind of feel like it's a lot of money for like per session, but you're not buying like my time for 2 hours. You're buying my expertise, a bit like what you said with Picasso. And I'm like, it's not £100 per session, right? I kind of have, like, I usually work with clients over a long period of time. I want to get to know you. So I work over 6 blocks. So from the life coaching side, I want to understand those customers, what's going on in your world, and explore that together. And part of the stuff, the real meaningful change that happens with my clients happens between sessions. It doesn't happen sat and a light bulb goes off and suddenly, the heavens open and it's like a ray of sunshine and
the Messiah.
Yeah. Birds are chirping. That doesn't happen, right? Usually there's discussion. It's unpicking things. There's like new questions asked, and it's like, oh man, the client's taking that away. And then there's usually that kind of seeps in and usually has some effect in between sessions. So gradually you're kind of moving that client to where they want to get to as an objective. But I find I found that as a fair way to charge. How I got there is probably recognizing the type of clients I was bringing in weren't the type of clients I wanted. So I had to get clearer about the type of clients I wanted so I could start to attract the right type of customer. So I think that's why I've ended up there. And on the property mentoring side, I'm kind of, if anything, I'm moving away from one-to-one coaching there and time for money, because there's a lot of information exchange there. So I've got information from a 30 odd grand course, and I've got like years of experience as an investor. So I'm kind of passing some of that information on. So it's kind of hybrid mentoring, some coaching, some training in there. And I just prefer to do that in a group environment. So I actually, I'm in the middle of my first mastermind. I'm launching another mastermind. It's just launched this week. It'll be starting in November. And I've increased the price because I recognised there was some value missing in the pilot, which I'm running just now. So I've increased the price of it, and I've put a couple of extra one-to-one sessions in there because I want the outcomes for the people that are on the course to be met. So I'm like, well, it's 2 one-to-ones for me. I think I've raised the price by £100. Now, a one-to-one session for me, I would be charging like 250 quid for two sessions, 250 quid per session. So I'm going £100 good value. I don't need to charge that full rate because I've got multiple people paying that. But it's consistent. I don't offer any discounts to people coming on and like early birds. I don't like that because I don't like someone sat next to someone else on a course going, oh, how much you pay? I paid this. I only paid this. It just doesn't set a very good kind of precedent. So
you know,
I've talked for about 10 minutes, mate. So
no, it's good because that resonates with me as well, just quickly, because I'd always say that as well. A couple of things just to kind of touch upon there. I try to say to people, don't discount on big business as well, because the minute you start to discount on big business or any big projects you can get on there, that's a commodity you're chipping away at as well. What I'd always say, if you've got loyal customers there who want to do more with you, but there's an opportunity that their budgets are maybe tightly constrained as they once weren't, COVID or whatever else, then at that point you can have that relationship and the discussion with them and say, okay, we can do this and do that. That means you may be removing some of these values like you mentioned, Darren, but doing that a little bit more. Because no matter whatever client you work with, you always over deliver and give that extra value. You'll find that yourself is the more you do it, and then that's why they come back for more. And you talked about actually the relationships as well, understanding your price point and how it's changing as well. And for me, that's constantly changing, evolving over the last couple of years, where you understand your price point, you understand what clients you're bringing in and what clients you don't want to work with at times. And I've had a conversation with potential clients where they've said that's just too expensive. And I've said, apologies, this is the price I'm working to based upon what you require. And they're saying, well, I need it much cheaper. And I'm saying, I'm not the right person for you, but I can recommend 2 or 3 people that might be right for you at that point. And that isn't about having an ego. It's about understanding the value you're going to deliver and how much you over deliver as well, and the expertise you're going to put in that project as well. And that can range from whether or not it's transformational coaching, property, design, brand, anything else. You always put that little bit of value in, and don't be scared to walk away. Have the confidence in your ability to go, I really appreciate this, but I don't think this is going to be right for me and you, and have that conversation early and talk about money early as well, which we're going to talk about soon as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I've had clients come to me and say exactly that, and I get your rate differs based on what client sat in front of you. For me, I keep it consistent, but it's a different industry. I kind of like that is normal, I guess, to have that. What I would say is I do have some pro bono clients that I'll offer again from time to time, based upon someone that I believe and I think I have the opportunity to do so. If I think they absolutely need that support and want that support, and I see that, but money is just a massive blocker for them, then we'll figure something out. But I do absolutely think that like you have to be able to walk away from that and go, do you know what, it's just not right. And that's one of the reasons why I did increase from both like certainly for life coaching, because the clients that I was getting weren't the clients that I was looking for as my business. Like, I'm working mainly with business owners themselves. I'm working with professionals, and like people, either their business is paying for them to do coaching, or as an individual, they want to invest in their own personal development and growth, or it's a business owner that's just going through some challenges. So that's who I kind of typically work with. And if someone's saying like, that like they can't afford that, or they're like that's not near them. Chris Voss talks about like win-win. So from a negotiation point of view, you go like you want both sides to win. If you lower your rate, you've already lost. So if you're going to do like 100 and you go like, oh no, I'm going to discount, even if it's big business or someone that says they can't afford it, it's like, go and do that for 60. It's like, well, if I do that for 60, I'm going to be like, my attitude subconsciously is going to be like I'm not even getting paid what I think this value is. So exactly. Like you're going to be the one that's losing. You're not going to be 60 quid better off as a result of that session or whatever block of sessions. So I do think there's an element of sticking to your principles about what you're worth, because they've won and they'll be okay with that, but you're not. And actually what you need this is probably goes beyond selling, but it's like a happy relationship. You need both parties to win. You need both parties to be happy and feel like they are getting good value. You've already set the stall out to say this is the price as the business, and then the customer, if they're happy to pay that, it's like, listen, no forces involved. There's no arm up the back. Like these are the values. Like it would be great to work with you, and I think we would be able to do great things. But it should never be a force one way or the other. And if you think that there's a negotiation beyond a price that you're comfortable like delivering, don't do it, because you just won't feel good about giving that customer your absolute best.
And well said, Darren. Honestly, that's fantastic. I mean, you're right about once you undervalue the price point, you undervalue what your commitment's going to be, you undervalue what they believe you're going to deliver for them as well, and they always expect that a bit more. And there's a couple of things here. I remember working in an agency, and I remember working with different agencies as well, where they quote a project to a client and go beyond the quoted hours. And I'd flag up, listen, my hours are past this, and like, listen, just tally it in, we'll just keep a track of it. And then what I'd say to them, what happened with that client? Did you charge them extra? And this is when I was growing up as a junior designer, asking the questions, the early doors. And they say, no, we'll use that next time. So then we have to do a project similar, then we'll have that as a base point. And I was always amazed by that. I was always like, so you've just lost probably about $1,000 to maybe $4,000 in this project because it's a massive client and they're pushing the boundaries here. But you're not going to have the confidence or kudos to go and ask them for that money and say this beyond it. But next time it comes around, you'll say, by the way, that last job was over. So for me, that always amazed me, and I always kind of understood that you need to work on your own projects, but always review them as well and understand how much time and commitment you put in to understand whether or not you need to up your costs as well. But at the same time, don't let money just disappear. Don't let the hours just disappear from you as well. And that's why I briefly talk about retainers. Retainers are interesting things. So retainers in the brand world, design world, advertising world, coaching world, anything. There's positives and negatives. One of the negatives is somebody else feels shortchanged. Whether it's the agency or the person who's initiated it are going to feel they're going to get as much value from this as possible. If they lose a couple of hours in that month, they're going to say, well, I didn't really get my money's worth. Or the person who's delivering the service is going to feel they're getting shortchanged because they're always getting basically drum into them that need to deliver this by a certain amount of hours. So there's that part of a kind of retainer element. It's always cost-based, which is negative. It can be that you're just churning stuff out. But the positive is that you know what revenue you're spending, and you know the relationship you've got is going to be positive as well, as long as you keep it on that kind of balance as well. So I think there's a lot in there for people to understand about challenging, knowing what you're paid and what you're getting paid for is right, and at the baseline of what you want to do, but charging as well the right kind of clients, whether it's grade A clients as well. But then if it's a retainer as well, agreeing that up front as to what you're going to get paid for and delivering that at a certain time, but not becoming a production monkey where you're just churning stuff out, because the last thing you want to do is to become undervalued and underappreciated in that organisation that you're delivering this content for. Or
yeah, for. I mean, retainers. I think, like if I take it like to a coaching perspective, right? As I said, I don't charge per session, but the client will break that down. It's like I work with someone for £600. Within that, they get 6 sessions with me. So it's like, it's £100 per session. But yeah, I work with them to create the outcome of change that is desired by the individual. And we'll have a conversation. If I think that I'm the coach to be able to help them, I'll say, look, absolutely, I'd love to work with you. If I said, yeah, my job is just to sit for 6 hours and with no aim or objective and no output. Like I am, yeah. But even therapy has a even therapy has an outcome. Like you need to, there's a contract status, like as it like to start with as a coach. So you have a verbal contract to agree, like what would be best use of this time together? What would be best use of all our time together? Where do you see yourself in 6 months' time? If that's the time scale we're working to. So there's always a kind of North Star I talk about, like where are we heading to? So that we're maybe 2-3 sessions in and we're discussing different things and the conversation's flowing, and I guide where that goes, or I'm guided really by the client where that goes, but I'm always able to bring that back to say, so how does this connect with our outcome, that your outcome that you're looking for? It's not mine, it's not ours. Yeah. It's the client's outcome. So if I talk about like retainers in that sense, they're not paying for my time sat there. They're paying for the outcome that they want. And it's the exact same. So I think I agree with you on retainers. I've had felt the pain as a consumer paying for an outcome and like having several day rates later with thousands spent and nowhere near the end product that I thought. And I have to take that on me. I mean, that's not a nice, as a consumer or business owner, like from the other side of the fence, I don't like that.
Is that because no objectives were set, or how would that? Maybe that's a different conversation, but
yeah, I think so. I think there is a bit of that. I think like knowing who your customer is and knowing like what the objectives are and making sure that that's explicitly clear.
Okay.
By both parties. Again, it's the nature of creating a win-win. Wherever like one side's losing, there's no point in entering into that, even if you're the one that's winning.
Yes.
And that might sound like, it's like, well, I've won. It's win-lose. That's cool. Well, no, it's not, because you want your client to feel like they've won, because you both agree this is the objective and this is the output, and you've delivered, they've exchanged value, money, for a service or product that you've provided that has enabled them to solve a problem of some kind. Because that's all these exchanges generally do. If one side spent money and not got what they needed, right? The company has the money and they've had that exchange of value, but the client still sat there without it. And in that original transaction, yes, they've won, but who's that client speaking to? Like, and how many other clients? Like that business is probably not going to be thought favorably on if that's how they would operate. So I do think, there's probably a good place for them. Like I have some virtual assistants, a tech VA that I work with, and it's not a big retainer. It's like, say, a minimum 2 hours a month. And I usually always have at least 2 hours. And I just carry stuff over for that. And I'm always like, she'll say to me like, I've done this. You've still got like an hour and a half left. I'm like, what? I'm like, if I was trying to do some of that stuff, I'd be like, what? Like, I'd be taking a full day.
But that's again that relationship and that trust, and that's her over delivering as well and showcasing, or them over delivering,
or just being really efficient and good at that. So that outcome on that basis, I don't know what the outcome always is. It's like this month kind of need this stuff. Next month I need these things, and we'll kind of adjust how many hours based upon what you need. But I find that works really well because it's relatively low cost and low entry. Like, and I just think that works really well. And I'm never left disappointed. I don't know how she feels about it, actually. So that's an interesting point, because it might be that maybe she's not charging enough, or maybe it is taking her more time than it should be, but she doesn't want to pass that on to me because she feels like she's got to work a bit harder and she's maybe building a business. So it's a good point, actually. And again, if she feels like she's losing and like I'm feeling like I'm getting a great service, at some point that's going to have an effect on her.
Well, that's so when I used to work with the agencies as well in the organisations, we used to do a kind of quarterly review, which would be with the procurement team. Scarily enough, actually, you'd kind of score each other and you talk about the things that are working, not working. So that we discuss the kind of retainers as well. But I just want to touch upon two things, because you mentioned something there which is made me laugh actually as well. So there's two different ways you can do stuff. One's time for money, hourly rate.
Yeah.
One is a project cost. So they very much differ as well. So say I'm going to touch upon Blair Hines in a second, but say one project is going to cost, it's going to be redevelop a new brand for, say, Nike or whatever it is. Cool, no worries. You're going to quote that as, say, don't know, $1.5 million, say. Cool. But the hours work isn't going to be $1.5 million work. It's going to be maybe $500,000 work. But then you look at how long what that's going to be, longevity, and what that's going to occur. So the way I look at this stuff as well is that there's a great book, Blair Hines, Win Without Pitching.
I was wondering, I was going to ask you what you said. I'm going to touch on Blair Hines here. And I was like, I don't know, is that a euphemism or?
No. So Win Without Pitching, fantastic book to check out if you've not checked out.
Blair Hines, what's it called? What's the book?
Blair Hines, Win Without Pitching. Yeah, Win Without Pitching. We'll put it in the show notes. So he's got a great kind of model as well, which he works to as well, which is the 4-stage model of actually how you can actually have a conversation with a client, close it, and actually move on for it. So he's got 4 kind of stages of conversation. One's called the probative conversation, which is the initial chat. That's the kind of chat you have with somebody to say, I've been recommended to you, let's have a chat about it. That's the kind of the dating kind of one, if you like. That's where you're sussing out each other. Do I like them? Do I not like them? Do they kind of fit? And then you get to be that expert in their eyes. So they might say to you, I heard you're a coach and you do this. And you go along saying, I'm a transformational coach, you do this. And they go, oh, bloody hell, I didn't know that. And in their eyes, they're seeing you as the expert. So that's the first conversation you have. The next conversation you have is a qualifying conversation. And that's pretty much you understand what they want to achieve, what's next, and what's the steps for them. You understand the opportunities that lie in there for you as well. Is it going to be they want to have 10 sessions of coaching, they want to join your mastermind, or whatever else that is? So that's really crucial. So that's a qualifying conversation. And that's where you talked about the outcome. There's something Blair Hines talks about, is the desired future state. So you understand in 3 years' time, where would you want to be? That's your desired future state. You put that in their mind. I want to do this because I want to go and live in a beach in a hut in the Maldives and do nothing for 4 years. Why do you want to do that? Because I want to relax. How do you get there? I'll get there by, if I bring in 4 clients, it's going to turn my business from a £200 revenue a year to a £1 million revenue a year. Okay, fantastic, excellent, brilliant. So that's you got the qualifying conversation. You understand the next steps. The next one you then move on to is a value conversation. So you break that down and you say, okay, I want you to commit to your desired future state here. You really want to be lying on a beach in 3 years' time in the Maldives because you've achieved this, this, and this. Cool. The metrics to do that is this, and the value add will be this to get you to that point. This is what I'll bring you. So you're still the expert in that conversation as well. And then if you sit there and you say, okay, you're going to have £1 million turnover in the next 3 years, which is going to get you to this point. For my role in this, I would take 10% of that £1 million turnover that you're going to generate. My bill will be this, £100,000, say. It might be 5%. So you're having that qualifying conversation so that money's talked about early. And you say, that's roughly what I could do for you. Let me go away and I'll give you 3 options on the table. And this is where we talk about anchoring high. The 3 options on the table, you go away and you work out, you say, okay, what value do they want me to give them? So you start with the best possible solution. What would everything be? The bells and whistle. Detail it all down. Give them everything. You think about what would your highest price point be? Anchor it at the top price point. What would your most comfortable price point be? That's the middle one as well. And all you're doing is just slightly taking off stuff to give it as much value as possible, make sure it's value for you as well. So you're looking at the gold star, then the silver, and not the bronze, because the bronze is the one that they could always go to. But this is all to do with extreme, it's called extremeness aversion, where you're worried about the top end of the price point and you're worried about the low end of the price point. You don't want to see it's too cheap and too expensive. So they'll normally go for the middle option. So you make the middle option as best possible for you and the client. And that's a kind of the way he does that as well. And he'll talk about the 4th one is the closing conversation. You go back with the 3 options on the table, always in person if you can. Now it zooms a bit harder, but you make sure you have that physical kind of conversation and you talk them through it. And any issues they've got during that point, when you're talking to them, you make sure you've got an answer for them. You make sure that it's an answer that you can actually justify as well. Because there's going to be worries as well. But if you've done your job right and you've done that qualifying conversation right, understood the desired future state, then you should be in a position that it's a win-win, like you say, for both of you as well. You both feel valued as well. And again, you're anchoring them as well to their future state of mind. So I love that when you talk about time for money and the outcome as well.
Yeah, I mean, the desired state is an NLP practice as well. So it's something I work with clients. So like we actually physically step in, not physically, but at least mentally.
What's NLP for people who don't know it? I know it as well.
Neuro-linguistic programming. So I guess it's a coaching technique that that I guess amongst other things, but it's a technique used in helping someone visualize and have an emotive response to a point in time in the future that they want to be. So it's kind of, you can physically, no, I keep talking physically, you're mentally taking them there. So it feels like they're there. They can see, they can smell, they can touch, they can hear what's going on. But yeah, it's really, really powerful. And I think there's something else in there around like making sure money's mentioned early, because like it's probably a lead conversion element rather than how much you charge. But life's and business is about relationships. Like I love having conversations. If I'm like on a call with someone, hopefully I'm giving a bit of value, and I'm like, I always say, like, listen, even if we don't work together, like hopefully you've got some value from this. Feel free to drop me a text as well if you need some help. I'll be able to support you. Right. And you don't want to build up lots of relationships that end in a no when you drop your price at the very end. So make sure that there's like some price conversations happening earlier. Like I always make sure if it's a call that I think is going to be leading to a sale, I'll always want to make sure that they've at least had an email or a call with me before where I've mentioned the price. So if they're showing up there, it's like by showing up, they know that that's not a prohibitive price and that's not going to be an objection from it. And therefore, it's a value conversation. It's like, well, does the value match? Is in terms of the outcome they want, is that product or service going to be something that meets that? And if it is, then they'll have the means to pay that price. You know, if it's not, usually that'll be an email or a no-show to the next meeting, and you kind of you can get a feel for that. But it's rather than building lots of kind of warm conversation and nice leads, and then just finding that you're completely at different ends of what they both need and what you're able to provide. But there's that image that you normally see going around. It's like when the client asks me if I can do it any cheaper, and it's like this lovely drawn picture of a horse, but then what it should be, and then it's like half price, and it's like something my 3-year-old or 4-year-old would have drawn.
But it sounds like, I mean, actually, intrinsically, we are kind of all doing this in different ways. Like you were saying that as well, you're doing that as well. This just gives you a kind of a structure and a process to follow. And in fairness, it costs about $150 to get it shipped over from the States. They don't get any here. But it's got all the guides and the books in here that's helped me as well have those kind of conversations early. And I think that's really
that book you're talking about, 150.
Yeah. Well, no. So there's like, so this is a workbook, if you can see it on the screen.
Right. Okay.
You can buy the little book, and the book's about $15.
Someone saw you coming there.
No, it's brilliant. It's fantastic. This is really good guidebook. But what it says, even though we're having all these great conversations, there's one thing we've not done, which is we're talking about money, we're talking about the conversation, is that unless you can get, once you've had these conversations and you get your invoice over as quickly as possible or whatever else, unless you get that paid as quickly as possible, whether it's half of it or the full price, whatever else, unless you make them have a financial commitment to you, then that commitment that conversation can go away quickly, because they might be all excited about it, but then something can happen a day down the line, 2 days down the line. But unless they've actually made a financial commitment to you, they can walk away at any point. And even when they make a commitment to you, always make sure you get terms and conditions right. Make sure you've got on your website, you can send them all this kind of stuff, because and make sure you've got your insurance as well, because you want to be covered as much as possible. So there's all that kind of more boring side to it, but that's the side of business you need to make sure you're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, anyone stepping out inside in business, there's a risk. Like I was chatting to a valuer the other day down at HMO in Liverpool, and he prices in as part of his value is, you look at all the, I'll spare all like how he gets into it, but part of it, he goes, I bake in a bit of risk, like 10% risk for you and your investment. And I'm like, really? And I'd never known that. Obviously, it's not like it's my first property that I've had refinanced or revalued. But I'm like, he's building in risk money. Isn't that interesting? Like everyone that goes into business has that risk as well. So sometimes this element of like business, like making a profit as if that's taboo. But like that person's chosen to go into business, and obviously they need to make a profit so that they can continue providing you with a great service. If you or I weren't making money from what we did, we couldn't do it. We'd have to be working maybe in a job, or I don't know, like wherever. We'd need to go. We need to go somewhere else.
What did Angela say in the podcast? Angela, I remember her saying that if you don't make money, it's a hobby. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like it, and if it's a hobby, who would you rather want working on your craft? A business owner who's driven to deliver the best value for a positive value exchange, or someone that's delivering a hobby? It's like an absolute no brainer. But yeah, then we both need to. You're absolutely right. It's a big missing party. This is the win-win element. If you're not able to make a profit from it, you don't have enough customers, or you're not charging enough, like you're not going to be able to sustain that business. So you'll stop being able to provide that value to people. So you almost got an obligation to charge at the right level and be confident about what you're worth, so that you can carry on like being passionate about the thing that hopefully should be your business in the first place. Like if I talk about coaching, it's the thing that I would do for free. But if I wasn't able to make a living out of it, then I would be doing a lot less of it for free. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I'd have to spend my time and trade that time for money, probably in a job or doing something else. So therefore, I wouldn't have as much time to be able to help people in coaching as I do just now. So almost I've got I've got a duty to be able to make sure I charge and make money and drive a profitable business. And that is fundamental. It has to be that, so it's a win for you. It also needs to make sure that it works for clients as well. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Because that's the only way you can evolve as an individual and make your service even better. The more you do it and the more experience you get and the more clients you work with as well. You're right. If you were to work in, say, like Tesco or wherever it was, then if you're doing this as a side hustle, you're not going to have that experience. It's going to take you much longer to get there. So you do need to have a profitable business. You need to be aware of all the other stuff. But yeah, no matter what client you speak to, if they're keen to do work with you, make sure you get that transaction done as quickly as possible. Probably not the best idea to walk about a card machine, so they can take payments there.
You're right. There's a half-life. You talk about there's a half-life in motivation to do. So once you've committed to something, there's like a half-life. I used to find this. I'd go into property training events and I'd be like, oh, these are all the strategies, and you can go and do this, and you'd be walking out like, yeah, this is amazing. Within a day, it's like you've halved it. Another day, you've halved the motivation again. By the end of the week, you're like, I do not have a clue what I'm doing. And that's why I think like 2-day, 3-day courses are pretty shit in that sort of space. You need ongoing support, and that's why I do what I do in the property side. But yeah, so charging as close to the event and getting that financial commitment is absolutely massive. Yeah.
Well, I think that's been a really good whistle-stop tour of corporate life, business life, and some personal stories as well.
It has a bit of nostalgia as well. Some things that came up that I didn't think were going to come up, but hopefully you've got some value from that. So yeah, been good talking, mate, as always. Definitely, and obviously, if anyone's listening, they've got their own personal stories, want to ask questions, want to know their own price points, whatever, then feel free to get in touch, because yeah, always happy to have a conversation. Yeah, ask Chris how much it is for a logo. Fiverr.com, there you go. Cool, good stuff. Thanks, Chris. Cheers, Dan. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose, and we'll see you next week.